Good Noise, the second edition. Stay by C. Denby Swanson, featuring Jane Bradley, with sound design by Robert Siefkin. Some backstory for those just hearing us. Stay is an ode to parenting in tough times. The story behind how the play came to be is a story of artistic harmony. We'll try to give you both. We're known by some for Shakespeare in the Parking Lot and Bryant Park Shakespeare, but the Drilling Company began with new plays inspired by the late great James Houghton and the Signature Theater. They invited one playwright, did many of that playwright's plays. The Drilling Company invited many playwrights to create one project around one theme or idea. Fast forward to 2020, the pandemic, the shutdown. We reached out to playwrights with a new theme, even though we had no idea of exactly how or what form the plays would be ultimately revealed. The theme was time. In the early days of the shutdown, with the casualties of the pandemic, it seemed everyone was appreciating time differently. C. Denby Swanson was one of the playwrights we reached out to because she's been a part of our work for 21 years. Most recently, Gabriel, the story of female friendship and choice, produced in 2018 and brought back for our 2020 Zoomcast. But unforgettably, The Norwegians, her gangster comedy that ran for 168 performances in our off-Broadway run, which up until the pandemic was still enjoying productions across America. Atomic Farm Girl was another one of the full lengths that we were happy to produce, and more than 10 short plays for Drilling Company short play projects. Most have been published. What follows is a treat, a conversation with her. It's arranged in 2 parts, before and after Stay, which features Jane Bradley, memorably our Hamlet in The Parking Lot and in Bryant Park, and many other roles. Jane also originated the role of Susan in Gabriel. Robert Siefkin turns in our sound design, as he did for many of our earliest productions, so it's great to have him back. Here's a list, an incomplete one, of places C. Denby Swanson's work has lived, or is living in the case of publishers, and some organizations that have had the good sense to honor her with awards or grants. The Lark, the Guthrie Theater, the Alley Theater, the Women's Project, Susan Smith Blackburn Award, New York Innovative Theater Awards, the Dramatists Guild, Dramatics Magazine, William Inge Playwright, Salvage Vanguard, Icicle Creek Theater Festival, Earth Matters Theater Festival, Zach Theater, NEATCG, Smith & Krause, Educational Theater Lab, Play Scripts Incorporated, the Jerome Foundation, the McKnight Foundation, and there are more. And now, here's Colin Denby Swanson on Stay.
Welcome,
Thank
Denby
you.
Swanson. Yeah.
Thanks.
How did Stay happen for you?
Yeah, Stay is meditation really on parenting and connection in an unconnected world, in a pandemic world where we can't see each other, where we're sort of isolated, staying at home inside a lot. So it's a meditative practice where we get to hopefully take a walk. That's the goal.
Right. That was the big thing, right? During COVID, right?
Yes.
It was like you can't do this, but one of the things you can do is take a walk.
You can take a walk.
So
and
the
so
characters
can happen. Yeah. So we were talking about theater happening in different ways. And we have to use the technology that we have. So the play can happen Zoom or radio or webcast or whatever technological format that we have, but it should be a experienced by the audience in motion. Hopefully that's the goal, because we're outside.
Yeah, you're very specific in some of the stage directions about the actual walk that the character is taking,
Mm-hmm.
the narrator, and that they actually change directions you're purposeful in the play in mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Elaborate on why you made the change of direction choice. It's interesting.
Yeah, the thing about taking a walk is that the play is influenced by a Lisa D'Amour play called Slabber that she had here in Austin decades ago. It was a really lovely play. We met at a theater. We all got a cassette tape. Each car of people had a cassette tape, and then we got in our cars, and we didn't know where the play was going to be performed until we had the cassette tape playing. It was the time when we had cassette tapes.
Right. That's it. No, that's it.
And that gave us directions, right, of where we had to go, and that was where the play was. And so I was thinking about that and the unexpectedness of being in different cities, right, or different towns, and being outside taking a walk, and then you can't plan as an audience in this piece. Hopefully, is that you have to be sort of available to shift, as we all are in parenting as well. And that was the physical incarnation of the text. Is you don't get to plan where you're going.
Everybody winds up going to Poland. They expect to be going, somewhere else. You think you're going to Italy. Your ticket is to Italy. You get on the plane. You think you're on your way to Rome. Big trip, Rome. Ancient place. Colosseum, Pantheon, St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican. You've always wanted to go. It's very meaningful to you. An idea you've thought of. One of the world's most romantic cities. Culture, heritage. You've studied the travel books, developed an itinerary, booked a hotel. There will be so much gelato and such good wine and art and history. It's a place, right? It's got charisma. And you arrive. You're groggy. It was a long flight. But you are not in Rome. This is some other country. Poland. You're in Poland. Warsaw, maybe? Which is... Pierogies are delicious. It's just not the trip you thought you were going to be on. That's what having kids is like. Parenting. That's what it's like. You thought you just needed to plan. Most people don't, but you do. You pack the right clothes, present your passport, get the stamp, disembark, slide through customs. You thought it would be easy. You thought you could just... But you can't. You don't. You are not prepared. Not for this kid. Not this kid. Still, you must go forward. There are people behind you. You're holding up the line. There are other people with other children, none of whom... You just have to go forward. So, you go forward. Parenting fucks with your sense of direction and your sense of propulsion. Are you moving forward? Are you moving in any direction at all? Is the place you're supposed to get to ahead of you? Can you even get there from here? We go. We all go. We just go in a direction. We think it's chosen. It's not. We have no power here. We think it's natural, instinctive. It's not. We learn on the way. Or try to. Travel does that thing where it messes with your sense of time and observation. The basic things you think you know about your body. When you're traveling, you can no longer tell when you're supposed to be hungry. And then you don't remember how to solve problems like an empty belly. What looks good to eat? It all just looks different. You eat a lot of weird mayonnaise salads before you figure out how to tell. You look at your kid one day and you're like, is he supposed to be that floppy? No, probably not, right? He's not supposed to... His body... He's flesh, not melted vinyl. Is this the street you're supposed to be on? Wait. Stop. You don't recognize it, of course, because you've never been here before. New city confusion, that's understandable, but this isn't even the city you thought you were headed to. This isn't the climate. This isn't the language. Italians yell. You wait for everything to get loud and boisterous, and it doesn't. They use Latin letters in Poland, but with diacritical marks that make your eyes cross. A strange kind of W. What you hear is words that sound like a series of brushstrokes punctuated with vowels, clustered around an underground jazz bar way down beneath the cobblestone street. So you change directions. You make a lot of calls in the fucking dark. Because you got off the plane, and it's not the time you expected. It's not even day anymore. It's not even today. It's like tomorrow or yesterday or something. It's like everything has been moved just 1 inch to the left. So you're there fumbling to make a call with one of those phone cards, because we're still using the metaphor of being in Europe, like Europe of the 90s when there were still public phones and you bought phone cards with a value on them, gift cards for calling people. You didn't just insert a coin. Like, travel is disorienting enough, even if you wind up where you think you're going. And now, what is food supposed to look like? What does tired do to you here? How do you get home? Can you drink the water? Is beer cheaper? Things you take for granted. What are the basic social systems? Like grocery stores and phones and buses. You've had nightmares about finding and buying a bus ticket almost as terrifying as the ones where all your teeth fall out. But that's where you find yourself as a parent. This place. What is this place? Look around. Are you alone? No. In that you live on a planet with 8 billion other people, in a country with 328 million other people, in a city with, what, thousands? Hundreds of thousands? Millions? You live in a neighborhood, on a street. Someone delivers your mail. Someone else is always shopping at your grocery store, even if you are not there. People are inside the buildings on your left and right, even if no one pops their head outside as you walk past, clicking through their most recent online purchase. And yet you know that feeling, if you've ever traveled by yourself, of being alone, on your own, isolated. You are replicating that feeling by being on this journey now, with your headphones in your ears, locking out the outside world. Change direction. Your grandmother gave birth to 11 children, popped one out every 18 to 24 months. She skipped her college graduation ceremony to get married, and 9 months later had her first child. Hung her diploma in the bathroom so that she could see it at least once a day. Eventually, after the 5th or 6th or 7th child, she started locking herself in there for 45 minutes at a stretch. She'd stare at the framed document on the wall. Her hideaway was secure until the older kids figured out that the bathroom closet's back wall was separated by only a piece of cheap-ass particle board from the next room, and they just tore it apart in an effort to get to her. And she was overrun. Will you ever be by yourself again? Your child cries a lot, screams a lot. Little things. A cup spills, a spoon drops. The disappointment and distress wage war in his brain. He overturns chairs in preschool, punches other kids for not knowing the exact way to line up, then flings himself under a desk and howls like a coyote. His teacher says she just doesn't have time for it. You don't either. What if you just have to make lunch for this little motherfucker? What if that's your obligation? What if it's not a medical thing, a diagnosable issue? What if he's just a dick? Still, you'd have to make his lunch. You will have to make his lunch for a long-ass time. Your child's pediatrician sets you up with support groups, online trainings. You join some other parents on Facebook. Only a small number of people know this experience, know where you are. And for some fucked up, unknowable reason, they mostly seem to be in Australia. What is wrong in Australia that so many of their parents have children going through this thing? Or maybe that's the wrong question. what is right in Australia that so many of their parents know their children are going through this thing and are reaching out. Maybe it's the vastness of their continent, the distance between people. They have to be purposeful. Does your child have muscle weakness also? Does your child have a heart thing? Does anyone know if my child will always leak poop? Is this pediatric schizophrenia? Oh, please, God, make it not be that. Is it that? I think it's that. Coming back from a long drive, you stop at a Dairy Queen in some rural town. You take your kid to the bathroom, the ladies' room, which is tiled in white from floor to ceiling, metal stall doors. You're pretty sure your kid has shat himself. You go in a stall. All the toilets are automatic flush, and you can't cover the sensor light at the same time that you're helping him undress, so it just keeps flushing over and over, a thunderous, wicked ceramic Niagara Falls, ricocheting off the hard tile and metal surfaces. It assaults his ears until he cowers in a corner, drenched in shit, and now pee, screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. You have to throw him over your shoulder, bolt past the ladies who are waiting along one wall with their little girls, aghast that city folk like you let their children behave like this in public. They'd have already paddled him real good if he was theirs, and you run out to the parking lot to your car. It shouldn't be this hard. And it is. And it isn't even the hard part yet. And you feel very alone. Other parents celebrate staying home, relish their community pool, say, "We've had a hard time too, it's hard for everyone." They do crafts together, 3rd week in quarantine. Fucking assholes, right? Your child has never done a craft. Your child threw paint the last time you tried to do a craft. Some kind of popsicle stick craft that you downloaded. How to make a spaceship or a dinosaur or some shit. Parenting is just a series of Pinterest fails and bad feelings. Your child wouldn't do the craft. Couldn't do the craft. You bought the materials anyway because, fuck, you just hope that one day he'll be able to do something you understand. Instead, he threw the paint and then chased the cat down the hall, screaming like he was in Game of Thrones, holding the popsicle sticks between his fingers like you carry your car keys at night. Once the cat is cornered, what will he do? You drop everything and run. Run. Run now. You are used to dropping everything for this child. Dropping, spilling, leaving, just leaving things behind. You leave the wet paint, also the glue that spilled naturally. Paint and glue containers are made to spill. It's their primary function. It's not really about the construction or decoration. It's not really crafts or art or sensory experiences. It's about the metaphor that life is messy and sticky and useless and expensive and will ruin everything. And you chase after your kid, who is going all Braveheart down the hallway, yelling, and still you are too late. You hear a loud screech from the cat. You yell for your child to stop. Stop. Whatever he is doing, just fucking stop. Stop. He is standing by the bed when you get to him, blank-faced, pale and small and scared. No longer a warrior. Frail. The way he is when the juice turns off. Not the child you had tried to manifest. Not the child you planned for. Not the child you had hoped to craft together even, though you tried. The therapists and specialists, the glue and paint of the medical world. He is not Rome. He is Poland. He is Poland after the Germans and the Soviets.
Special thanks to the performance of Jane Bradley and the sound design of Robert Siefkin. What follows is a description of how the piece came to be in the second half of my conversation with playwright C. Denby Swanson.
The pandemic, you had a very specific change of scenery.
We
Is that
did.
right?
Yes, I have an 8-year-old son. So at the time he was 7, and we had left Austin. He's a special needs kiddo, and we had decided to evacuate, basically
Right.
evacuate Austin.
Right.
When there was a peak. We drove 8 hours into West Texas, where my mother lives, in a very small town in remote West Texas, where there's nothing out there. Town
Right.
of about 5,000 people. And we were living in a tiny little 400 square foot cabin outside the town. So a couple of mile or so outside of town, in the middle of nowhere. And it had been going okay. You know, we were struggling, as many parents and families, kids were struggling. And when you called, what that June, you called me whenever.
It was even. I think it was late April. Might have been.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was late April.
Yeah, things were beginning to get a little. My son and I. My son was having a real hard time with.
Yeah, we didn't. Nobody knew.
Pandemic.
Nobody knew when anybody was going to be able to go back.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you obviously you left Austin. You didn't. As I recall, you didn't know when you're.
We thought it was just going to be a month, maybe a few weeks.
Right.
Like we thought we would take the heat off, right? Get out of the spring break, post spring break madness. That was going to be
that was the moment that everybody found themselves in 20, this sort of slot where it was like, it's going to take a lot longer.
And then we were there out in West Texas for 5 months. Yeah, it was a much longer process but it was great. It was great being near my mom, but it was hard for my kid. And we wound up diving into, crisis as the summer progressed.
Right. And I
hit me that night at a
I caught you. Yeah. I caught you. I caught you at a tough evening, and we got to chatting. And so I recall that I was mentioning something to you. I was trying to be positive, and I think I said something to you, to the effect of, well, being a parent is, you think you're getting on a plane trip to Italy, but you wind up getting off and you're in Poland. Something like that. And
I wrote that shit down. Excuse my French.
Right. So you wrote, not at all. No. So you wrote that down. So then continue. So then continue on
it was a very fast writing I mean, this is, it's a single voice, and I had a lot to say about that. And so it really struck a nerve about, the expectations of parenting, and especially parenting a special needs child, where you think, oh, parenting is this, here it is, the what I've prepared for, and then it's not, it's something else, and you go with it.
So you wrote this piece in like a day, as I recall.
So.
You must have fired something off in about 48 hours, and then it was it's terrific. And I got I remember receiving the play very quickly after we had this conversation, and then something. Then a weird thing happened.
A weird thing happened, which was that I sent the play to you, sent the draft of it to you. I was excited, emailed it to you off, and then I went into my little cabin, and I was watching a TV show called Counterpart, which had just a couple of seasons, and it had been produced obviously pre-pandemic, but it was a pandemic themed TV show, dark sci-fi noir thriller, about the flu and secret agents and infection.
Yep.
In Berlin. It was great.
Okay. Great COVID watch.
Great COVID watch, but also a little bit too on the nose.
Okay. So there you are. You're watching Counterpart, and
watching Counterpart. I get to the last season, the last episodes of season. I'm watching that as just after I sent this email to you. Yeah. And in this episode, the TV show, a character that we've met, we see her at home for the first time, and she has a partner, husband, which we didn't know, So we meet him for the first time, and she has a child, which we didn't know. And we meet the child for the first time, and the child has special needs. And so the husband at some point has a scene in which he turns to one of the major characters of the show, and he says, yeah, parenting is like getting on a plane thinking you're going to Italy and you get off in Poland.
Like the exact line.
The exact
line that,
the exact line. The exact line. And I thought, holy is Hamilton in this TV show? Like, I'm zooming back and forth, rewinding. Kind of like, where is he in this? Is he like,
maybe it's a show I did.
Been in this show?
Yeah,
quoting dialogue, and you're not in it, and I was incredibly disappointed about that.
Sure.
But I also thought, oh my God, I've plagiarized.
Plagiarizing, sure. That's the immediate thing you start thinking.
And hadn't seen yet.
You copied a line. You copied, and now we've got this play.
Now we've got this play.
We have a play somewhere that's written with this line that clearly somebody else wrote in a TV show.
Oh my God!
So you call me up, and as I
fell out of my chair, and I was listening to the TV show with my earbuds on, perched on this tiny little cabin
out in East
nowhere,
Texas.
In West Texas, right?
Yeah, West Texas. I put you in the wrong. I took you in the wrong Texas.
The jackrabbits and the road runners outside, horses. This is happening right here.
You're all by yourself. You're having a completely lonesome dove moment as a writer.
What's that lonesome dove moment?
Sure. Well, you're all by yourself. You're all alone out there, right? You're just quiet, West Texas.
Writing in my little writing cabin, in my little remote, like I can see the sunset outside my window. And
somebody else is already listening to what you're putting out there, and then so you contacted me.
What the hell? Yeah.
Right, and I was surprised because the comment, of course, that I made, I remembered from a conversation that I had literally 14, 15 years earlier with a dear friend. And I just didn't forget the conversation. He was the one who said it to me because he was trying to put words to describe the experience he was having. And so I thought, holy cow, that's just, I hadn't copied it from any TV show. I copied it from a conversation I had with somebody 14, 15 years earlier, which would seem like fair advice because my friend was dealing with he was a father dealing with a child who had some special needs. But then I remember Googling it, and I Googled it right away to find out, and I find out that it's a line that's in some 1989 essay that has been given out to a lot of groups. And so I think that's the explanation. I think, I guess that's it. And I guess my friend, all those years ago, must have been around 2010 or something, he was having his experience, and I assumed that he had come in contact with this day. So a couple of days went by, and I picked up the phone and called my friend, because this is just one of those writer things. And I said, hey, I told him the whole story. I said, so we found out that you had read this essay, and he remembered the conversation. He remembered the line, of course, because it was close to his experience. And he said, I never read that essay. I never read any essay. I just said it. I mean, I just said it at the time. He just remembered having said the line. So it's just one of those, the whole story of it coming into being and being traded around like that. It was such a, there's this way in which we, they say, oh, there's no such thing as a new idea. And on the other hand, there's a lot of talk about, how you copyright your work and this. Sure. But there's also, it just gives evidence to the fact that, there are real ideas that actually just occur to more than one person, right?
And I think that's another part of the connection piece of this, that it's
Yeah. Yeah.
People across differences or space, or at this point decades, time.
Yes. Yeah. It was a 15 that conversation that I was referring to had come. It was 14, 15 years earlier, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
and we had and we found out through the beauty of the internet, which we wouldn't have had access to in 1989, but we did when we were having this conversation in 2020. That some writer had actually put it in an essay that we would otherwise wouldn't have read. At any rate, the same thought is now in your wonderful play. So, with that in mind, we'll wrap it up, and we'll give thanks to C. Denby Swanson for keeping our ears open, even in West Texas, and we'll get on to Stay with Jane Bradley. Thank you, Colin Denby.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And that concludes the second edition of the Drilling Company's Good Noise. We'll be back in a week or so with more. Thanks very much for listening.